Donal O'Neill, one of the founding members of the GPA, is with us to give us his thoughts on the current impasse. Donal, on the face of it, it seems like we're not a million miles away from a solution here, and yet this is as militant as we've seen from the GPA in a long time. So what's your take or instinct on what's going on at the moment?
Well, it's back to the future, really. I couldn't quite believe what I was reading yesterday. I'd been travelling for a few days, so I wasn't entirely up to speed, but it literally felt like the type of incident we would have encountered and argued back in the day. So I was just stunned that it's an issue at all, to be quite honest. It's appalling.
What do you think is the issue? Like, because overnight we've had the letter that the GAA have written to the county executives to say, look, we have restored the 65 cent for 4 sessions, but it's bad practice for us to mandate any more than 4 sessions, because the ESRI report in 2019 said that it was 31 hours a week was what we were asking of players. That's too much, and that's all we're willing to pay for. I see a little bit of merit in that, but I don't really see how it's the players' responsibility to fix that. It's actually the county managers and the county board's problem to fix that. So it just seems like everybody kind of agrees a little bit, but they don't know what they agree on and they can't find a solution.
Well, I mean, to put this in perspective, that issue has never been anything but one of the biggest issues facing players. I remember sitting down with my cousin James McCartan when we were at Queen's University and tracking the hours that he was doing between travel. He was playing from everybody from Ulster to international rules to 21s, county club. And I can assure you it was a lot more than 31 hours even back then. That issue has never been addressed. And I don't think it can be addressed in the context of an amateur sport. And because there are no contractual agreements to which the players are bound and the county boards are equally bound, you don't have any framework outside of a fair play mechanism. And the GAA don't do fair play. They do money and they do what suits them, and that hasn't changed. And again, it's just back to the future stuff. It's absolutely remarkable that this is even being discussed in 2022. I'm just astonished.
The solution does seem to be to get the county boards to pay for any extra sessions over the 4. It doesn't seem like it's that difficult to work out. It's just that we were talking about this a little bit earlier on. County boards notoriously cheap. Who's going to make the case that actually the players have done 5 sessions or 6 sessions? Is the GPA representative automatically then accused of being treacherous, was the word that Owen used earlier on? Like, how could you potentially police a limit in the number of sessions?
Well, you can't. It's never been possible. It's not possible within the current framework. And again, that's because of the amateur nature of the sport. Players will always want to perform at their zenith. So any athlete and anybody who's ever competed at any level in any sport will understand the desire that burns in any individual, male, female. If they're at an elite level or thereabouts or trying to get to that level, they're going to do everything they can. And they're certainly not going to listen to old boys in suits telling them you should only be training 3 days a week. That's complete and utter nonsense in the context of elite sport. So we need to give the players the best opportunity to put on their best performance, and that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing the appetite of the players to be the best they can be, and we're seeing the old guys in suits doing what they always do, trying to dictate something that really makes no sense at all. And maybe it's a slight failure on the GPA's part that they haven't been taken seriously enough in negotiations to allow this to happen. I don't know. I'm not a party to that. But if I was in the GPA's seat, I would be acting very, very aggressively against this, because it needs to be put to bed and the GAA need to be put back in their box, in my opinion.
Do you think it's viable for county boards to pick up the tab on the remaining expenses, or does that just illustrate then the inequalities between different counties?
Well, I mean, I've always said that many county boards are completely inept. They're run on a very amateur basis. I've had dealings with some of them directly, and it's something that has never been addressed. We put proposals to the GAA 20 plus years ago how they might go about that. They were ignored. They've done nothing in the interim. So it's no surprise that county boards find themselves, creaking at the seams. They always have, and they always will do in this type of framework that we see. which really never changes within the context of the GAA's macro structures. So that's not going to change. But this is not, the county boards are units of the GAA. So it's for the GAA and the county boards to sort this out. It's not for players to have to scramble for petrol money and expenses. It's absolutely ridiculous in this day and age. So the GAA need to get their house in order, and I think the GPA need to, really respond very aggressively to make sure they do that. And this is not an issue that ever comes back round the block again, because frankly, it's ridiculous.
What would you do, Donal, if they were to seek your counsel today, and there's some talk of disrupting throw-in times at the weekend? What would you do to make sure that it doesn't happen again?
Well, the one strategy that we had in the back pocket, and we never triggered it, and obviously it's hypothetical to say whether it would have the players would have fully complied or not. But I would say certainly we're happy to play the matches, but turn the cameras off. You can have your radio coverage, but please turn the cameras off, or we will not be taking the field. You need to hit the GAA where it hurts, because nothing else works, and nothing has changed in 20 years, clearly. So that would be my advice, to go in very, very hard, because here we are 20 years later with the same old issues. And, the GAA had a very successful year last year, you might say, commercially. So I don't see how there is any rationale for penalising players, especially with the cost of living crisis that's now emerged. I find it unfathomable that the GAA could act in this manner at this point in time.
That's interesting. So it wasn't a strike as in we're not going to play the games. We're going to play the games. We're going to give everybody who attends the games the opportunity to see the game, and we're going to give everybody the opportunity to experience the game by listening to it. But the commercial contracts that you have around broadcast rights will be affected.
Correct. And each and every sponsorship that the GAA engages in is, directly connected and feeds off those television pictures. So that was a mechanism that we identified to be very, very powerful. You wouldn't ostracize the fans. People could still listen to the game. They could still attend the game, but turn the cameras off. And now, of course, we've got additional sponsors and shirts. I mean, were the players consulted on any of that? I mean, they're billboards to an extent that they haven't been at any time in the past. So the train just keeps moving down that, commercial track, and the players seem to have stalled somewhere down the line. So that's what I see. And as I said at the outset there, it's back to the future stuff, and it's not good enough.
There has been some form of protest in players not coming out to do post-match interviews on Saturday and Sunday at the weekend, but there are a couple of exceptions to it. Jack O'Connor, John Mahon and Pádraig Joyce, three of the managers who come to mind, who came out and did speak to the media. Does that damage the impact of the strike and the protest, in your opinion?
Well, if Pádraig Joyce had done it 20 years ago, yes, but not today. He's a manager. Managers do what managers do, and that's a separate issue. So I would say absolutely not. I mean, this is a player issue, and it's for players to address and stand up and be counted if that's what the GPA decides. And I hope they do. I really hope they do.
What was really interesting yesterday is that Pat Nolan from the Mirror tweeted a couple of pages from Desi Farrell's book, and just to try and give a bit of context into Pádraig Joyce's comments, because when he did speak, he said that he doesn't really care for the GPA. Those conversations are above his pay grade, is essentially what he said when he came out after the Galway game at the weekend. And the context of this is an incident which I had no idea of back in 2001 when the GPA held their awards, and Pádraig Joyce was due to get the award, and then late votes came in, and Declan Meehan became the Footballer of the Year. Michael Donlan, I understand, picked up the award, and then the award was Michael Donlan picked up the award on Meehan's behalf, and then because Meehan was in Boston and Joyce wasn't available in the first instance either, and the award was sent back. And I think were you the recipient of the award when it was sent back? Or the literal recipient of it.
It's a great pub quiz question. So that particular year, I had the trophy for the GPA Player of the Year, indeed, in my apartment in Dublin. It was sent back to me by Declan. So I remember it well. But listen, I mean, the reality is Pádraig Joyce was a magnificent footballer, but he's not a footballer now. So this comes back to, in my earlier point, this is an issue for the players of today. And I think managers, officials can sometimes get carried away with their own profile. It's really got nothing to do with them. Desi's now obviously the Dublin manager, which casts an interesting shadow on it. But again, even he's irrelevant. This is a player issue, and it's for players to resolve, because it will keep coming back if they don't put it to bed once and for all.
What happened when you received the award that time? Well, there's some suggestion in the book that it was dismantled or something.
Yes, it was. It came in. I could still see the box that came to my door, and I didn't know what it was. So this was obviously pre-Amazon days and all of that. So it was quite unusual to get a big cardboard box in the post. So yeah, it had been dismantled and boxed up neatly and sent back to me in Dublin. We often joked about it afterwards. If the car had been up for grabs that year, would it have come back? But there was only 500 quid on the table that particular year, so Opel weren't on the scene. But yeah, I mean, listen, it was a huge administrative embarrassment for us at that time. You have to put your hands up and say that was a big mistake. But you know, we were savagely under-resourced at that time, and we were literally just doing our best, and we were taking punches from all corners at that point. But definitely hands up, our mistake. Fully understandable how Joyce and Meehan reacted, and I'm sure many others would have done the same thing. But it's a long time ago now, and I think I think Pádraig's comments on what's happening today are probably less relevant than they were back then, because he's a manager, he's not a player, and I think that's paramount here. The players need to step forward and stand up, in my opinion.
Was it not a state-of-the-art mobile phone instead of a car at the point? I think it was smart. Carphone Warehouse were the commercial sponsors. Yeah,
there was 500 quid on a phone, so right. That was what was on the table at that point. But
did that get sent back as well?
I waited as an Armagh man until 2002 before we had the car, obviously. So that worked out okay for the lads up north.
Did Declan send the phone back as well?
I don't know if the phone had been delivered. Carphone Warehouse, I'm trying to remember the detail. Probably would have just sent that directly, but I didn't receive the phone. And I didn't check whether it was it was used or not, but the trophy came back neatly boxed up, and that was one of the early incidents of the GPA when we didn't know whether we were going to get over the line or not. But things changed very rapidly after that in the following 12 months, and we identified the All-Stars as a target because we knew that we could inflict real commercial damage on the GAA by starting our own awards program, sticking with it and trying to make it something substantial, which it went on to become the following year.
And then ultimately they ended up merging as the merger, and the two organisations became very close in recent years. So this is a fracture in the relationship for the first time in a number of years, really. One last question from me: what did the GPA need to do, or does it matter about keeping the general population and the general membership on side, or is that also irrelevant?
Well, no, I think it's always relevant, because if you step forward to take action, you'd like to think that there would be compliance. And again, I'm so far removed from it now, it's hard to know, but you were always aware back in the day that the amateur ethos of the sport filtered down to the players' response to some of the issues. And I'm not sure the psychology of that is interesting, because in a professional sport, when the unions move, everybody moves. We were never 100% sure that we had that level of support at any point. And you could probably question whether the GPA has that today. I don't know. But you wouldn't really find out until you stepped into the ring. But my move would be to strike out very, very firmly against the GAA, because they've proven that the leopard doesn't change its spots, and the only thing that they understand, to put it bluntly, is a good kicking.
All right, we're going to put a request out to the GAA to come on and talk a little bit more about what their plan to try and resolve the impasse is. But for now, Donal O'Neill, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, fellas.
It's Donal O'Neill giving us some thoughts and insight into the founding fires that the GPA came from.